Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicouvaris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic, and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM. From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
Sports Scene presented by Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com. Sports Scene midweek online, Saturday on the radio on WPMH, and tunein.com by typing WPMH in the search bar. Tell your friends about Sports Scene. Twitter @GregBic. You can see the rest of my Twitter handles on GJBTV.com. Thank you to our military for what you do 24/7. Guest lineup presented by GJBTV.com. Phone line presented by the Newport News Greek Festival coming up May 28th and May 31st. For more, go to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. For more, log on to gjbtv.com. NCAA basketball is heating up. XFL, in my opinion, is minor league football. Not sure if it will sustain. Glad spring is near. Great interviews, excellent guests, business segments, highlights, commentary. What teased me off? Thank you for listening to Sports Scene. We love our regulars, tourists who listen online and on the radio. Stay tuned.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn Steakhouse in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with she crab soup, an assortment of appetizers such as the fried oyster, Rockefeller, crispy calamari, just to name a few. Aberdeen Barn is the finest premium steaks, prime rib, grilled tomahawk ribeye, seafood, chicken, pasta dishes, and live music in a most pleasing atmosphere. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And welcome back to Sports Scene @GregBic on Twitter. Glad you're with us every Saturday from 10 to 11 on 100.1 FM, 1010 AM. TuneIn.com by typing WPMH in the search bar. We've had him on Sports Highlights, had him on Sports Scene. We look forward to chatting now with the managing partner, editor-in-chief of Russell Street Report in Maryland. How are you, Mr. Tony Lombardi?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Of course, we're in February now. Go ahead and give us your Twitter handles and how people get a hold of you.
On Twitter, you can find me at RSR for Russell Street Report, RSR Lombardi. And on Facebook, you can find us at Ravens 24/7, Ravens 247.
Very nice. Let's talk about, since you just mentioned the Ravens, the season for them has been well over a month now. It did not end fashionably. They played a Saturday night game against a very hungry Tennessee team, and quite frankly, you take away the regular season, that did not look like a competitive game at all. What exactly happened in your opinion, and what's been the aftermath of that game?
Well, from my perspective, what happened was that they lost the momentum that they built up through that 12-game winning streak. And the Ravens are a young team, and I think that this young team had a difficult time adjusting to all that downtime. Because remember, Greg, in Week 17, it didn't matter whether the Ravens won or lost, so they played a lot of their backups during that game, and RG3 started the game. They ended up winning it, but I think it was just a moral victory for Ravens fans who, that's the bitter rival of the Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that said, I just think that downtime, they lost something that they had built through those 12-game winning streak, and in the process, they looked more like the tired team, the team that was not ready to play, the team that was less physical than a Titans team who was coming into Baltimore for the third consecutive road game in the playoffs. So that was pretty impressive performance by the Titans. I thought that they had a really good game plan. I thought the Ravens were out-coached by the Titans. And, when you look at the offensive snaps and the 59 throws by Lamar Jackson, totally out of character for the Ravens. And if you think about it, you stick with what got you to that game, and you don't abandon it so quickly. And they got behind, 14-6 there, and heading into the second half, and it seemed to me like they panicked a little bit from a coaching perspective, and that's very similar to what they did, I thought, against the Los Angeles Chargers just the year before. So hopefully they can build upon that. They can learn from their mistakes, but they certainly didn't learn from the mistakes against the LA Chargers 1 year earlier.
Talking to Tony Lombardi here from Russell Street Report. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us for Sports Scene. And really, you look at that weather. In January, it was perfect weather. It was very mild. There was no precipitation. It really favored the running game of the Titans. I think the Ravens probably would have preferred, maybe I'm wrong, a game kind of like the 49ers game, a wet, cold, windy game, kind of maybe to deter the running game a little bit. But like you said, the focus was all in Tennessee. They look like the hungry team. They look like the desire. And I'll say this, because I was, working the television that game. I was leaving the game right by the locker room of the Titans, and know what they said? 2 words that not many of the public heard: easy work. Easy work. That was an ultimate cut and insult to the Ravens, that the Titans players were saying it out loud right there in the tunnel. Easy work.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the Ravens handed it to the Titans the year before. I know it was a different team, different composition of both teams and both rosters. But I know that the Ravens came away from that game really disappointed in themselves. And, the Titans are on the schedule next year. They come into Baltimore again. And when they do, I think you'll see a different outcome. But that's, a long time away. But those guys really talked a big game, the Titans, for accomplishing very little. And I know that they probably went further than most people thought, but for having it handed to them by the Chiefs and whatnot. I give their coaching staff a lot of credit for bringing that team along, because they started out poorly, and Ryan Tannehill for reinventing himself. But, when you come into somebody else's house and you talk a big game like that, there's repercussions. They might not happen right away, but trust me, the Ravens haven't forgotten all of that.
Right, but it really comes down to the postseason. I mean, it's going to come down. I mean, and I think Jackson's gotten a lot of criticism, the quarterback for the Ravens, because he only played partial season of 2018. He did play the full season in 2019. So, yes, he's 0-2 in the postseason, but he hasn't had a whole lot of experience, really, on the field during the regular season or the postseason. I mean, he's still just a year and a half under his belt. So I think he got a lot of criticism. He didn't play all that bad. It wasn't his perfect game. He threw a lot, but still, I mean, it's a total team effort, and I think just overall the Ravens were flat that day.
They really were, Greg. And I think if you had to pick the 3 best players for the Ravens in that game, Lamar is amongst those 3. You could argue he's the best, but I don't think there was anything on him at all. I think play calling really was lackluster. It really wasn't what the Ravens had done to get there. And, he wasn't getting a lot of help, because I think that both lines, offensively and defensively, the Ravens were getting stood up. I remember that, and this really jumped off the screen at me while watching the game, when the Ravens went for it on 4th down, which is kind of their MO. They've done it a lot this year. They went for it on 4th down. It was 4th and 1, and Lamar had a really ill-advised quarterback sneak that he bumped out to the right, just to try to come back to the left, and it just didn't work. But the thing that stood out in that play for me was that the offensive line for the Ravens was stood straight up. I mean, they were standing north and south. And whenever your offensive line is doing that, they're not pushing the line of scrimmage, and they're losing the battle at the line of scrimmage. I think that was indicative of what was going on in that game. I just think that they got beat physically at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, and they didn't have the wherewithal and the playmakers on the outside to make it happen other than Lamar. So, like I said, I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff of the Titans, and they came in with a good game plan. And the Ravens knew, Greg, that the only way the Titans were going to beat them is if they ran the ball down their throat. They let that happen, which is something that Baltimore is not used to for years and decades. Even opponents came into Baltimore with a running game. They were cut off at the pass, and they just never really seemed to perform well in Baltimore. But that changed with Derrick Henry and the Titans.
Yeah, I don't think this defense, as good as it was like the Lewis or Ed Reed or Suggs.
No, not at all.
Or that type of defense back in the, even in the 2012 championship team or the 2000 championship team. They were good, but there's no mega stars that were, that put fear in Henry's eyes. Obviously, they didn't do it that night. So, with that said, looking into 2020, just is still early, but football is a year-round sport. You got to figure the Bengals are going to improve a little bit, and they're not a bad couple-win game team this past year. They're still in a lot of games, even though they had a lot of turmoil. You got to figure the Browns are going to be a little bit better, and the Steelers with their quarterback back. What does that say with the Ravens?
Well, I actually think the Ravens are going to be better, too. And I don't disagree that all those teams can improve moving into 2020. But when you look at the Ravens and you look at the team that they were last year, I mean, they migrated from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson mid-season. Then in the offseason, they made some acquisitions that they thought would make the team better. I don't think any of them expected Lamar Jackson to perform the way he did. But, props to him for doing what he did. The second unanimous MVP in NFL history. But when you think about, if you could dial the clock back and say the Ravens were going to go to the playoffs, but they were going to get knocked out the first round, I would probably, but they would be hosting a game in the divisional round, I would probably say that's about as far as I thought they would go. I thought they would win one playoff game and they would get knocked out afterwards. But you build upon that. It's a really young team, and I think that experience left a bad taste in their mouths, and I think that it helps to drive them through the grind of the offseason. People tend to think that the grind is really in season. It's the preparation and all the weightlifting and all the making sure that you're in shape in the off season that really is the grind and through training camp to get you ready for the regular season. Once the regular season starts, I've heard players like Trevor Price, former Raven, and even this is the question Marshall Yanda is going to have to figure out: is the grind worth it again? Do I want to put myself through this? Because as Trevor Price has said before, if the only thing I had to do was play on Sunday or Monday, I could play until I was 50. It's the grind to really get you. But I think having said all that, the youth of the Ravens and the experience that they got this year, I think makes them a better team going into next year. Plus, they've got 9 picks. They're in a cap situation that is the best cap situation they've been in forever, possibly. And I think Eric DeCosta has done a marvelous job of really working that roster, working closely with his scouts and with his coaching staff to make sure they had the kind of players that they want to play with.
And Jan is one of the few, if not only players, left over from the Billick era, correct? He played 1 year for Billick.
Yes, that's true. Or maybe Sam Cook may have been there, too. So that was probably the only two.
Yeah, like I said, maybe just a few players talking to Tony Lombardi. And, of course, switching gears to all the cheating scandal in baseball, let's talk about how it parallels the football. The Patriots got a lot of flack with Deflategate and some issues. But the thing that's troubling to me with the whole baseball thing compared to football is every team has got sophisticated camera work. They take their own video. They got high-end video. And I'm like, you look at the XFL, they're calling their plays where the entire world can hear what the next play is going to be. So, I mean, I know the Astros were wrong in what they did, but it seems like all these teams, football, basketball, baseball, have access to high-end video and technology that they all have an idea or an edge, let's say a lot more than they did 20 or 30 years ago, Tony.
There's no question about it. The science of all sports has improved dramatically, and I think that's given the players individually an opportunity to get better if they used the technology in a proper way. But obviously the Astros didn't do that. I mean, it was clearly cheating. And, the thing of it is you've got Altuve, you've got Correa, you've got Bergman coming out, and they're talking about the cheating. Of those three, only Correa seems to be somewhat contrite, somewhat sincere in his apology. But you've got their owner, Jim Crane. He can't even remember what he said about this whole scandal, because he said one thing and then in the same conversation went against what he said. And to me, when you have a guy that really can't answer questions and he answers them in a contradictory way, that means he's lying, because if you tell the truth, you don't have to worry, you don't have to remember what you said because it's the truth. And I just think with guys like that, it's put a big scar on the game. I think, I've talked to some fans, and fans are like, MLB, I mean, what are they doing? This commissioner Manfred is just a joke, and they're allowing these guys to cheat. They point at all the steroid use and how these guys are kept out of the Hall of Fame, and Pete Rose is out of the Hall of Fame, when I think pretty much everybody would agree that what the Astros did was worse than all that.
Right. I think this gives a green light that they got to put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, because Manfred right now has got zero credibility. Then he made fun of the World Series ornament, too.
I mean, he's gotten zero credibility. He's right. He's the commissioner. He's supposed to be the standard and set the integrity of the league, and when he has none. And, I haven't heard anything, maybe you have, Greg, but it almost seems to me that these guys that came out and spoke out about what the Astros did, they got immunity, and they basically got a free ride to say whatever they want and still enjoy that World Series ring and that World Series trophy. And Altuve beat out somebody for the MVP that year, and maybe that guy should have gotten the MVP. And it goes on and on. And the rest of the players in the league that don't play for the Astros, I listened to an interview with Nick Markakis the other day, former Oriole, now with the Atlanta Braves, and he was just talking. I mean, he seemed to be hurt by this. It was almost as if, they've made it harder for all of us to play with integrity, because no one's going to trust what we're doing now because they're all thinking we all cheat. And it's a really, really black scar on this league. And, when I think back to some of the other scandals back in the old days, we've seen movies about it, Greg, with, the Black Sox scandal and Sueless Joe Jackson, who really should not have ever been kept out of the Hall of Fame, has been kept out of the Hall of Fame for something he didn't even do. And these kinds of things go on. It's just, I don't know. It's a mess, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. And it will be really interesting how the Houston Astros are received in visiting ballparks.
I mean, you think about football, it's only 8 road games. These are 81 road games. They're going to have to deal with it. And then the commissioner referred to it, like I said earlier, as a piece of metal. Well, I scrap metal, and I don't look at my medal as a World Series trophy or an NFL trophy. I mean, that's an insult to the guys that you were talking about earlier in Baltimore and the NFL that have to grind it out in the winter, and the spring, the summer, and the fall to get the Lombardi trophy or a World Series trophy or whatever it is, an NBA trophy. I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears, and referred as a piece of metal is a total insult to past, present, and future players and managers.
Yeah, I mean, you think about when you just made the comparison to the Lombardi trophy, when you think about Roger Goodell, I've criticized Roger Goodell a lot over the years, but one thing you can always say about Roger is he protects the shield. He does whatever he can to protect the integrity of that shield. Some of it might not seem very genuine when he says it, but he's always talking about the shield. And this guy, Manfred, pretty much just discarded it.
You're right. And with that note, we'll take a short break and come back with more of Tony Lombardi on Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, stay tuned. Mark your calendar for May 28th to May 31st. The Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. Celebrating a taste of Greece in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn Steakhouse in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with she crab soup, an assortment of appetizers such as the fried oyster, Rockefeller, crispy calamari, just to name a few. Aberdeen Barn has the finest premium steaks, prime rib, grilled tomahawk ribeye, seafood, chicken, pasta dishes, and live music in a most pleasing atmosphere. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios.
Back with Tony Lombardi right here on Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us at Greg Bick on Twitter every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 on 100.1 FM. TuneIn.com. Type in WPMH in the search bar, and also AM 1010 as well on the radio. And Tony, glad you're with us as well. And you talk about, all the nuances of, what goes on during an off season. It's really all about preparation. It's all about the right attitude, and the one thing the NFL guys you mentioned about the Titans coming back to the Ravens in 2020 is they'll get that schedule in April, and they'll have a clear definition of what they're going to do. And I think it really starts with that schedule coming out before the draft. The draft is important, of course, but when that schedule comes out, they can really focus on what they need to early on.
Well, this year, and a lot of people put stock in this. I really don't, but this year they talked about how the Ravens' schedule for 2020, that I think their opponent's winning percentage is the lowest in the league amongst all teams with their schedule coming up. So that's kind of interesting for a first-place team to have that. But, you got to play your schedule, and when you look at it ahead of time, how many times have we looked at a schedule, Greg, and there's always this team or teams that pop up and really play well, and then there's teams you expect to play well that don't, and it really alters the way you look at the schedule in season versus before the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Goodell and, Manfred too. And, of course, baseball's got a lot bigger schedule. They've got 162 games. The NFL's talking about 17 games. It's still maybe a few years away. But, there's not many concussions happening in baseball unless they're sliding into a player or a fence or something. But like you said about Goodell, I'll give him credit as well because he went against the grain against the Patriots a few years ago. And I guess what? I think he was right. The Patriots aren't all mighty and, by the Bible. They've had their issues too. Goodell got a lot of flack for it, but as time has gone on with Super Bowls going on and seasons going on, it seems like, he's met with people from different diversities as well, that his credibility is actually raising a little bit.
I think it is. And when you look at that situation with the Patriots, Greg, it's one of the, first of all, you have to appreciate and take into consideration the excellence of that organization and what they've accomplished in a salary cap era. It really truly is a dynasty, and it makes them easy to hate because people want to see them get knocked down. So the fans will side with anything that goes against the Patriots if you live outside the New England area. But that said, there's things the Patriots do. They put winning in front of everything, and I think they put it in front of everything to the demise or to kick to the side, your integrity at times. And, I don't know if you had an opportunity to see that Aaron Hernandez piece on Netflix, the 3-part series, but one of the things that comes through in that series is just how much the Patriots are willing to look away from problems if it helps them to win. And I think that's indicative of what they've done with Spygate, with the deflated balls, with whatever Brady has done. They put winning ahead. And I know winning is the only thing, and I know a lot of people live by that credo, but winning with integrity is the only thing. And to me, that they've kicked that to the side a lot of times. So, Roger did take a lot of grief for, putting those guys to their feet to the fire. And I think he was right. And probably, if you remember, they threw all the tape away for Spygate years ago because I don't know why he was throwing away evidence, but to me that suggested that it was worse than what he was penalizing them for. So if anything, he's probably cut them a little slack that they did not deserve.
Yeah, they can't get away from the drama, even with the Bengals here recently this past fall. So the Patriots always have asterisks. Yes, they're a great team. Yes, they have the greatest coach ever. And of course, he had some of his roots right there in Baltimore, as a former Colt assistant as well. So he was part of the Colts too back in the 70s, back in the glory days of Burt Jones and Lydell Mitchell. So all the credit to them. But of course, those who like power sometimes are afraid to lose it. And I think that deals with the Patriots. All right, let's switch gears now. It's still football season because the XFL is going on. I'll give you my thoughts, and I want to hear yours too. We've seen the Canadian Football League, that's sustained. Indoor Football League, that's sustained for a long time. Of course, it's not around anymore as well. And of course, you've seen the other league last year, the Alliance, couldn't even last barely a few games. The one thing the XFL has done right is they got 2 good networks in Fox and, of course, ESPN. Besides that, they've got a pretty good commissioner in Luck as well that's got a great background, too. And they waited just a few days after the Super Bowl to play their first game while football is still fresh in their minds. But I'm seeing not great attendance. The XFL team in D.C. is okay, but they're playing in a soccer stadium that seats about 20. And, of course, it looks really awkward when they're playing in New York where the Giants and the Jets play and just a few people are there. I'm still not sure it'll sustain. I think the advantage they have is they're only playing about 10 games. They got at least 5 or so at home, 5 on the road for the most part. So there's not a lot of games. It's very quick. The games are going by pretty quick, but still, do we really need all this extra football? I'm the type that likes football, basketball, baseball, a little golf, and a little tennis, back to football again. Some people just like football year-round, but that's the NFL in college. What about your thoughts about the XFL, and do we really need all this extra football?
Well, I think you just touched on part of what I was going to say, and that is that there is such an appetite for football because, as someone that runs a publication that covers the Ravens, we're busy probably 11 months and a week out of the year because the NFL always gives you something to talk about. Even up to the Super Bowl and after the Super Bowl, it's not long after that people start focusing their attention on the NFL combines and the draft and then organized team activities. Then there's summer training camp, and then before you know it, there's preseason and the regular season, and we're back at it again. The only really downtime is that I'm going to say somewhere right after that last organized team activity in June up to about the first week of July. So those 3 weeks in there, I think that's probably the only downtime we have, and because the appetite for football is so great. So I think what the XFL is trying to do is leverage that appetite in a way that's maybe a little different, maybe cost-effective because they know they can't have that draw, and try to be a little bit different that maybe piques some interest. And I think if you look at some of those rules, some of them are a little bizarre, but a couple of them I thought are pretty interesting in that, and they're trying to bring in a little bit more excitement, a bit more action on the field. Because I know, Greg, and you've probably heard this before too, that one of the complaints I get from fans across the NFL is that there's so much downtime when you're watching a game, whether it's an official review, whether it's a commercial break, whatever it happens to be, there are injuries on the field. There just seems to be so much downtime during that 3 hours and change that it kind of detracts your attention to the field, or away from the game, particularly for those people that go to the games. At least on TV, you're watching replays of a game, or maybe you're watching highlights of another game, or you're listening to an explanation of the call that's being decided upon on the field. So all those things, I think, come into play when it comes to the XFL and the fans' appetite for a distraction or for a new addition to the world of football with giving the XFL.
Yeah, but they'll see how they do against March Madness and, all the different tournaments and so forth. There'll be a lot more counter-programming against them. I do think that Sunday afternoon window is ideal because it's still wintertime right now. But, again, for people like Pro Football Talk, and yourself and others, I think it's content, if nothing else.
It is content, and I'm trying to understand it. And I guess what I do is when I'm looking at it is I'm comparing it to the NFL, and are they doing a few things that might be worthy of the NFL adopting? But the NFL is probably a little bit too snooty to take on something that the XFL came up with. But I just hope that it opens their mind up to new ideas if they happen to be better and if the fans like them. But overall, I guess I look at the XFL as a league where, they're putting potential players in place to make a new name for themselves. Maybe they're planting the seeds for a comeback to the NFL. Because I would think that almost all those guys that are out there are hoping that that's exactly what happens, that they draw enough attention to themselves that somewhere along the line they get another crack at making an NFL roster.
Right. Talking to Tony Lombardi at Greg Bickle on Twitter. Thanks for his time, talent, and treasure as well. What else are you guys working on? What's your focus here in the spring?
Well, we see all these. I mentioned before the draft is a big topic of discussion right now on our message boards and whatnot. So the thing that you see all over the place are all these mock drafts and whatnot. And I went and looked at what the best or the most popular mock drafters are doing. And like Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Bucky Brooks, guys like that, the best of those four that I just mentioned hit on 9 of 32 first-round picks last year. That's 28%. It gets way worse after round one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's such a need for content that people keep talking about the draft. But so what we've decided to do at Russell Street Report is we're going to take a look at the Ravens' needs, the Ravens' draft capital that they have, and we're going to be doing some scouting in terms of what types of players based on the needs are going to be available for the Ravens with each of their 9 picks. And that seems to be really getting traction because it's different. And we're calling it Ravens Draft Central. We've even bought the domain, ravensdraftcentral.com, which eventually points back to Russell Street Report. But it's just a collecting device for all these different scouting reports that our guys are doing, and it seems to be something that they're saying, oh, this is pretty different. This is a good thing to do because it's something that's important to my team and not just spitballing a bunch of prospects onto a board where only 28% of them are actually right.
Tony, thank you for joining us today. Always appreciate your insight. We always learn something having you on, and all the best for the rest of the spring as the year evolves.
My pleasure, Greg. Always a pleasure.
Very good. Tony Lombardi right there, managing partner, editor-in-chief, doing a great job with Russell Street Report. Sports Scene will continue after these messages. Mark your calendar for May 28th to May 31st as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. Celebrating a taste of Greece in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Now, back to Greg. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
Highlights, gjbtv.com, hrsmhof.com. Go to hrsmhof.com to see our big date for the Hampton Roads Sports Media Hall of Fame, our third annual induction in 2020. And, of course, HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit. gjbtv.com. Click the YouTube link on the homepage for archive shows. Question of the day presented by Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News to our producer, Andrew. Andrew, what is an ideal day off for you?
Well, that's easy. Sunny day at the beach, next to the ocean preferably, and just a bunch of fruit and nothing to do but sit and listen to the waves, maybe read a book, maybe not, take a nap, and just enjoy the sun.
Yeah, that and a few beverages would be great. Sports Scene will continue after these messages. Mark your calendar for May 28th to May 31st as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. Celebrating a taste of Greece in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn Steakhouse in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with she crab soup, an assortment of appetizers such as the fried oyster, Rockefeller, crispy calamari, just to name a few. Aberdeen Barn is the finest premium steaks, prime rib, grilled tomahawk ribeye, seafood, chicken, pasta dishes, and live music in a most pleasing atmosphere. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
And welcome back to Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. At Greg Bick on Twitter, talking to at S Dearth on Twitter. Sonny Dearth has been on several of our radio and TV shows for the last 32 years with Virginia Media and the Daily Press and the Virginia Pilot. Sonny, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks, Greg.
Sonny, I guess it's all come down to full circle. I'm reading in the paper now that a lot of the Norfolk staff will be coming to the City Center in Newport News. Tell us about it.
Well, basically, Virginia Media's lease has sold the big Virginian Pilot building on Brambleton Avenue in Norfolk and still has a lease at City Center in Newport News through 2025. So Tribune Publishing has decided to make the headquarters there. But I think a lot of people, especially the ones who live on the south side, will just work from home or work from the printing plant on Greenwich Road in Virginia Beach.
And that building in Norfolk, Sonny, was kind of like 7505 Warwick Boulevard, two iconic buildings, and you had the pleasure of working in both.
Well, yeah, the Pilot one was way older. The Pilot one was built in the 30s. It's going to be turned into luxury condominiums.
Right, but still two iconic buildings.
Yeah.
All right, well, before we continue right here about basketball, talk about a few of your colleagues that did take the early severance, and DJ, Dave Johnson, and David Teal that you worked with very closely up until the 1980s through 2020.
Yeah, they've been wonderful to work with. I've known them ever since I started with the Daily Press as a college intern in 1987, and I'm really going to miss them. I still see Dave Johnson a lot because he's the new Tribe scribe. He works for writing William & Mary stories for TribeAthletics.com. And Teal, I'm curious to see what he does. He can pretty much do anything he wants to. He's a multi-time Virginia Sports Writer of the Year, and he's in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and he knows pretty much everybody in the game.
Very nice talking to Sonny Dearth right here. And of course, and that's really changed a lot for the people that don't know, because when you first started working with the Daily Press, the Pilot was kind of competition. You wouldn't do a whole lot on the South Side, but now it's come full circle where you're all working together. And that kind of makes sense in the internet world we live in, Sonny. Years ago, if we got tomorrow's news today, we'd be ahead. But pretty much that's just the way it is now with the internet. Everything is instant, whether it's on Twitter, on Facebook, social media, or your up-to-date website.
Right, exactly, yeah. Well, most of the people I would directly work with now were at the Pilot originally. Our sports editor, Jamie Frankenberry, assistant sports editor, Greg Geeson. I work on the copy desk with guys like Joe Kasich and Matt Cahill and Matt Logan.
Very nice. And, of course, several guys from the Daily Press are still there, including Marty O'Brien, Norm Wood, and a host of others that Sonny's worked with behind the scenes and stories as well. All right, let's talk about college basketball, Sonny. This will be the year. Great year for Virginia last year, winning the national championship. I thought that one player probably shouldn't have gone early was Guy, but, he got married. I guess he wanted to leave early. But this will be a very interesting ACC tournament in Greensboro. Your thoughts?
I think it's pretty clear that no matter what happens from here on in, Louisville, Florida State, and Duke are going to be in the NCAA tournament. I think Virginia is also going to make it, though they're certainly not as secure as those other three teams. And after that, it's really hard to say. I don't think there's a definite team that's going to make it. Could be anybody winning the championship. This could be a year where teams who hadn't had such a great year throughout college basketball can get hot and win a conference tournament. So anybody who's like in the last four buys or last four in, I wouldn't feel too secure right now, because there will be some teams, I think, that grab automatic bids unexpectedly.
Yeah, we're only a few weeks.
UVA's getting there, boy. Those last three games when they won so many close ones, that's kept them afloat. The Cavaliers fans can really thank Thomas Wolde-Tensai, who's emerged as a good offensive, as a good three-point shooter, because they needed something. The offense was abysmal at times.
Yeah, we're only a few weeks away from Selection Sunday. I think Virginia's going to make it. That's my gut feeling, because they've been winning some games here late. I think that Syracuse and NC State need to win a lot of games here the rest of the season and go deep into the ACC tournament, either win it or get to the finals. I think, both have played pretty steady throughout the year, considering they've had a lot of injuries.
Yes. Syracuse was not very good early, but has improved. And NC State has been up and down.
Right.
The last few weeks, it will always be pretty interesting. That's one of the great charms of college basketball. It's one of why I've followed it so closely since the mid-'70s, and I was a preteen.
Yeah, back then when Wayne Mary beat North Carolina. And speaking of which, Sonny, of course, Wayne Mary had a lot of coaching changes in football and basketball, and they have not made the NCAA tournament. My question to you is, it really doesn't matter what the regular season happens. We know that. We've seen teams like Virginia back in the mid-'70s win the ACC tournament and had a bad regular season. Wayne Mary's had a great regular season, but it's going to come down to winning the postseason to make the NCAA tournament. Your thoughts, could this finally be the year?
Yeah, I think they're one of a group of teams that could win it among... also that includes Hofstra, which as of this taping was in first place, Charleston, maybe even Northeastern, which has had a disappointing year. But certainly I think the Tribe has the best post player in Nathan Knight. Nathan Knight might be the best player in the state. I think he's got a pro career ahead of him, perhaps even in the NBA. He's the guy whose game reminds me a lot of David Robinson.
Very good, yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. These tournaments are very exciting. How about Carolina? They have a losing record, but Sonny, they're losing every game very close, especially since Cole Anthony came back.
That's kind of a shame for them. It's been pretty much a wasted year. The injury to Cole Anthony really derailed Tar Heels.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be Roy Williams' first losing record ever, but. It's just a matter of every once in a while the bad breaks accumulate, and that's been the case with the Tar Heels.
Yeah.
They had a lot of senior talent to replace, and Cole Anthony couldn't do it himself.
Yeah, any chance of them going to the NCAA tournament probably not going to happen now in Greensboro, because the thought was that when the Greensboro bracket was announced, maybe Duke and Carolina both would be there. That's not going to happen. I mean, Duke has to, still win a lot more of their games, in my opinion, to be guaranteed there. If they lose 3 or 4 games, let's just say it happens, there's no guarantee they're going to be in Greensboro either. But I think from an attendance standpoint, they'd like to at least have Duke there. Your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I never pay attention much to who goes to which site. It's basically there's 68 teams. Are you in or are you out? I don't think it really matters much beyond that.
What about the Richmond schools, VCU and Richmond, their thoughts about postseason?
As of now, the Spiders have a better case. They beat VCU last week, and if they can do pretty well the rest of the season, they'll have an argument. It's certainly not a sure thing for them. They're right on the bubble. I don't think VCU can make it unless they literally would finish the regular season 5-0 and win 2 games in the conference tournament. It's not looking good for them. Unfortunately for the Rams, they had a cold spell at the wrong time, losing to George Mason and to Richmond before getting beat in a close game by Dayton.
Yeah, the pressures of January and February basketball.
I feel bad for Marcus Evans at Chesapeake. He's gotten hurt again. He's hurt his knee, and he hasn't been himself. In many cases, he hasn't even been in the game.
Very nice talking to Sonny Dearth at SDearth on Twitter. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. Sonny, I got to ask you about Old Dominion. Obviously, they've got a losing record as well. This has not gone the way Jeff Jones has thought it would be.
Well, you certainly don't have it. Who would have known that DeJour Dickens out of Bethel and Marquise Godwin out of Hampton High would both transfer, and then they lost Jason Wade to a knee injury in the middle of the season. They've done a pretty nice job retooling, but still they're in the middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a real stretch to see them advancing beyond their conference tournament.
2 more notes with Sonny Dearth. Sonny, you guys got to cover a lot of things in the paper. Of course, you can't cover everything in high school and college around here, but I want to get your thoughts nationally. Do you think the XFL will sustain past the next couple of years?
Well, thanks to the backing and the TV schedule they have, perhaps. I'm curious. I'm certainly glad for these rules innovations, and it seems more like real football than the original Vince McMahon thing did.
Mm-hmm. Women's basketball, Old Dominion's out to a great year. We'll see how they do in March, too. Your thoughts?
Oh, fantastic job by Nikki McCrae Penson and her players. They may even have a shot at an at-large bid if they don't win the Conference USA tournament. They ended Rice's 30-game conference winning streak.
Final thought.
That was very impressive.
Yes, Sonny.
Over to you and see if they can keep it going. They've had a good year from players like Asia Wayne. Very deep team.
Final question to Sonny Dearth. Sonny, of course, tennis is a big part of your life. What are your thoughts? We're not far away from the French Open. Who is going to be the king of clay for the men and women this spring, you think?
As for the women, who the heck knows? Could be anybody. Certainly Simona Halep will be there. I think Serena will mount a strong challenge. Sophia Cannon certainly has shown she can do it. That'll be a fantastic race for the women's, or for the men's rather, and until proven otherwise. I still think Rafael Nadal, he's certainly the best clay court player in the history of the sport. But if anybody can challenge him, it's Novak Djokovic. And, he's certainly hot coming off a victory at the Australian Open. And of the young guys, certainly Dominique Thiem is looking good.
All right, thanks again to Sonny Dearth. Sports Scene will continue after these messages.
Pointing the way in Hampton Roads. W261DI 100.1 FM Norfolk. AM 1010 WPMH Portsmouth. The Lighthouse. Mold. Trash. Rodents. Snakeskin. Even deceased animals. No, this isn't a Halloween shopping list. It's what might be under your house, in your crawl space. Schedule a free crawl space inspection with the Crawl Space Company and find out what's in your crawl space. Call 757-394-3494 to schedule your free inspection or visit thecrawlspacecompany.net. So, do you know what's in your crawl space?
Thank you, too, for your great show, because it really makes people think about topics that are important. I listen and I love, and I've called in before, too. I just really appreciate your program. I also think that it's good to have debates because it lets us all dig a little deeper. Hey, what does God's Word say about that? So I appreciate your show. I think it's great, and I think we all should be digging deeper into the Word of God and seeking God as to what He's called us to do.
Be sure to tune into Picking Up the Habit every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. here on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
Mark your calendar for May 28th to May 31st as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. Celebrating a taste of Greece in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org.
Get back to basics with Ray Gessner here on The Lighthouse.
Hi, I'm Ray Gessner with the Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. There's a whole bunch of us out there who are very lucky and very happy to be saved. And there are some right now who are listening to this conversation and they're not saved. And there's a verse in the Bible, it talks about this widow lady who just keeps knocking on a door, telling a king, please give me justice, give me justice, give me justice. And that was an unjust king, and eventually he gave her justice. It says that if you imagine what an unjust king would do, imagine what a just king would do. So what that really means is this. Just keep asking God over and over and over again, come into my life, I love you, please. Just come into my life. I want to be part of your world. But just keep knocking on that door. Trust me, he will be there. I'm Ray Gessner with the Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. God bless you, and you can find me at chimneysweep.com.
Half of all pregnancies in the U.S. are unplanned, and 43% of those pregnancies end in abortion. CareNet Peninsula is a nonprofit on a mission to bring help and hope in Christ to women facing pregnancy decisions. We're completely community funded. Because of faithful partners, our medical clinic provides free pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, and many other services. This support saves lives of hundreds of preborn babies a year and changes families. Will you help us? Donate or find out more at cnpeninsula.org. That's cnpeninsula.org.
What tees you off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
And one thing, our good friends at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville, go by and see Mike and the friendly staff. Spacious, nice dining area, bar, lunch, and dinner daily. Burgers, steaks, soups, salads, appetizers, seafood, pasta, chicken, ribs. They have it all. Desserts, a great menu, dine-in or carry-out. Of course, they do delivering as well. 1255 Fordham Drive in Virginia Beach. Give them a call at 523-4832. Go by and see Mike and the great staff. Go have a great meal at Outback in Kempsville in Virginia Beach. All right, what tees me off? NHL coaches being fired so often. League is a revolving door of coaches, Andrew. It just seems like, and I don't follow the NHL that often, but you have to give a coach or a manager time to get their own people in and time to evolve as a person.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it really just speaks to the lack of leadership with those who are doing the hiring and the firing. You know, if you're that wrong that often, then you've got a more systemic problem than the coach.
Yeah, it starts with the ownership and the board of directors as well. We've seen this no matter where we go, how high-end coffee shops with these high prices that really the middle class can't afford drinks there every single day because, you know, it's just so expensive. Sometimes one drink, even like a nice dragon fruit juice or something, non-alcoholic, costs more than a lunch at a restaurant does.
Yeah, there's a huge markup on that kind of thing, and I think, ironically, part of it, part of the draw for the people that go there is the price. If it weren't that expensive, it wouldn't seem elite enough, and they'd go spend their money somewhere else. So yeah, it's a cultural thing and a mindset thing, and probably just not healthy at the end of the day.
Speaking of not healthy at the end of the day, this can go on for hours, this topic can, but we live in an OCD world. When we were growing up, Andrew, you didn't see as much people with the antibacterial soaps and the different sprays and so forth, the gels. Now you see it everywhere. The media is totally hyped up the coronavirus. The cruise ship industry is suffering for it. Travel overseas is suffering, especially in China and other places. People are being quarantined. People are being sequestered. It really is difficult right before the spring, summer travel season. There's a lot of fear out there, but not a lot of facts.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a buddy who told a doctor once, I never get sick because I always avoid germs. And the doctor said, well, I never get sick because I'm constantly around germs. I mean, your body needs to come in contact with some sickness and with some stuff out there. So the antibacterial soaps are not necessarily the best way to keep yourself clean and keep yourself away from germs. You got to build up that immune system. And as far as the coronavirus, it's serious, it's problematic, but as always, we need to look at things realistically and not allow the media to work us up into a frenzy.
Absolutely. I mean, normally, Andrew, we hear about the flu season this time of the year. We've heard nothing about it. The flu season's almost over. It's still around. We've heard more about the coronavirus.
We have, although, folks, it has been pretty rough in some parts of Virginia, so be mindful, be careful, but certainly absolutely being overshadowed by the coronavirus 100%.
This is going to be interesting now through November. Obviously, whether you like Trump or not, he is the candidate for the Republican Party. The Democratic Party on the other side, whether you like them or not, I'm staying neutral here, has no idea who they want to support. They don't want a socialist and Bernie Sanders, yet they do. But the moderate Democrats don't want him at all, so you have all the people on MSNBC and CNN criticizing people like Sanders, but none of the others are taking charge or the lead. It seems like after every caucus, some different person's got momentum, and Obama is not endorsing any of them.
Yeah, it's a real, like you, staying neutral, but I think you have to acknowledge that the Democratic Party itself as an organization is just kind of in a mess. I mean, it just seems really disoriented, and there's also just questions about whether or not these primaries are being incredibly fair, and it's just a huge problem. And I do think you have to step back and say, okay, can representatives from this party really lead an entire nation if they're struggling this much just to get their primaries going? It's a weird time in our country's political history, that's for sure.
Nobody's definitely taking charge in the Democratic Party. I'll be glad when it's 1-on-1. That's what we want to see, and let the best man or woman win that challenge. Too many random holidays, Andrew. I mean, these banks look for any holiday to close down. I mean, I get it, President's Day, but it's not, the biggest holiday in the world. We had a holiday in January, the banks were closed. When you walk into a bank, because we still have to walk in occasionally, you can't help but hear the teller saying, oh, we're off for the holiday, but they even don't have no idea what the holiday even is.
Oh, yeah, well, and it's same with the government as well. They take the days off, and when my wife and I moved this past time, our trash day became Monday, and we thought, oh, that's nice, right after the weekend. Oh my goodness, we have so many days of the calendar year where our trash doesn't get picked up because of all of these crazy Monday holidays. It's ridiculous.
You're exactly right. I was going to say that as part of the what teased me off is a lot of people will put their trash out on Sunday. You see it, especially where you and I live at. They'll put their trash out on Sunday. Holiday, they don't know it's President's Day. They're not picking it up till Tuesday morning. They can put it out Sunday morning all they want. The city's not coming out there till Tuesday morning. People are confused still with all the social media we've got and access to internet. They have no idea when to put their trash and recycling out.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, most of us just have such a hard time believing that anyone could take so many days off in a year. It just doesn't, I think it doesn't compute for some folks. But yeah, a lot of people on President's Day had their cans out, I noticed. And it's weird. I don't know. We gotta bring it back a little bit. It's just too much. Too many holidays.
Yeah, it's too much drama with the trash and recycling. All right, that's what teased me off.
Pointing the way in Hampton Roads. W261DI 100.1 FM Norfolk. AM 1010 WPMH Portsmouth. The Lighthouse. Mold. Trash. Rodents. Snakeskin. Even deceased animals. No, this isn't a Halloween shopping list. It's what might be under your house, in your crawl space. Schedule a free crawl space inspection with the Crawl Space Company and find out what's in your crawl space. Call 757-394-3494 to schedule your free inspection or visit thecrawlspacecompany.net. So, do you know what's in your crawl space?
Thank you, too, for your great show, because it really makes people think about topics that are important. I listen and I love, and I've called in before, too. I just really appreciate your program. I also think that it's good to have debates because it lets us all dig a little deeper. Hey, what does God's Word say about that? So I appreciate your show. I think it's great, and I think we all should be digging deeper into the Word of God and seeking God as to what He's called us to do.
Be sure to tune into Picking Up the Habit every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. here on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
Mark your calendar for May 28th to May 31st as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. Celebrating a taste of Greece in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org.
And now get back to basics with Ray Gessner here on The Lighthouse.
Hi, I'm Ray Gessner with the Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. There's a whole bunch of us out there who are very lucky and very happy to be saved. And there are some right now who are listening to this conversation and they're not saved. And there's a verse in the Bible, it talks about this widow lady who just keeps knocking on a door, telling a king, please give me justice, give me justice, give me justice. And that was an unjust king, and eventually he gave her justice. It says that if you imagine what an unjust king would do, imagine what a just king would do. So what that really means is this. Just keep asking God over and over and over again, come into my life, I love you, please. Just come into my life. I want to be part of your world. Just keep knocking on that door. Trust me, he will be there. I'm Ray Gessner with the Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. God bless you, and you can find me at chimneysweep.com.
Half of all pregnancies in the U.S. are unplanned, and 43% of those pregnancies end in abortion. CareNet Peninsula is a nonprofit on a mission to bring help and hope in Christ to women facing pregnancy decisions. We're completely community funded. Because of faithful partners, our medical clinic provides free pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, and many other services. This support saves lives of hundreds of preborn babies a year and changes families. Will you help us? Donate or find out more at cnpeninsula.org. That's cnpeninsula.org.
You are uniquely brilliant with over 300 million plus years of space and capacity within your brain. According to neuroscientists, every day you think and choose more deeply, new circuits of neurons are developed, adding to your brilliance. Take time today to discover how powerful you really are, then refine your gift and serve it to the world. This is Dr. Heather Kinchlow with a Mind-Brain Moment.
Sports Scene, Hampton Roads' premier interview show with Greg Bicouvaris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM. Pointing the way in Hampton Roads. W261DI 100.1 FM Norfolk. AM 1010 WPMH Portsmouth. The Lighthouse.
Also, the month of March is a great month in Newport News. Sports highlights 300th show anniversary. Special thanks to Paul Cummings and Ray Price for all that they have done with that show. An interview show I've hosted since February of 92. For more, log on to nnpstv.com. I had a chance to interview my father and some great guests. Over 700 guests we've had on that show. One of our notable guests, of course, was Bruce Smith as well. Sports highlights. For more, log on to nnpstv.com. Stay tuned.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn Steakhouse in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with she crab soup, an assortment of appetizers such as the fried oyster, Rockefeller, crispy calamari, just to name a few. Aberdeen Barn is the finest premium steaks, prime rib, grilled tomahawk ribeye, seafood, chicken, pasta dishes, and live music in a most pleasing atmosphere. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
And want to thank our guests today on Sports Scene, Tony Lombardi, as well as Sonny Dearth. For more, log on to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link for Sports Scene and other archived audio and video. For Andrew, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We'll talk to you soon.
with Ray Gessner here on The Lighthouse.
Hi, I'm Ray Gessner with the Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. There's a whole bunch of us out there who are very lucky and very happy to be saved. And there are some right now who are listening to this conversation and they're not saved. And there's a verse in the Bible, it talks about this widow lady who just keeps knocking on a door, telling a king, please give me justice, give me justice, give me justice. And that was an unjust king, and eventually he gave her justice. It says that if you imagine what an unjust king would do, imagine what a just king would do. So what that really means is this. Just keep asking God over and over and over again, come into my life, I love you, please. Just come into my life. I want to be part of your world. Just keep knocking on that door. Trust me, he will be there. I'm Ray Gessner with a Step in Time Chimney Sweeps. God bless you, and you can find me at chimneysweep.com.